Hello ladies and gentlemen, Richard here, the creator of the Top Hat Gaming Man. Once again, thank you to all of you watching this today, because each and every one of you back my channel via either Patreon or YouTube membership. So huge thank you for that. Secondly, as mentioned in previous Patreon posts, I said I wanted to start mixing things up a little bit more, trying to create Patreon content that feels a little bit more raw and unedited, if that makes any sense. I just feel like the content perhaps needs to be a little bit more personal and different to what I'm already putting out on my YouTube channel. So today we're going to go through a list of the top 10 Dreamcast games I've probably put the most amount of time into in my life. At first I was just going to do the top 10 greatest Dreamcast games of all time, but I thought there's way too many videos like that out there on the information superhighway already, and I assume my list would probably end up being quite similar to a lot of other people's, considering the Dreamcast has a fairly small library to begin with. However, if you do want to learn about some more Dreamcast stuff, a few years ago I made a video on my top 10 hidden gems for the system, and that video has kind of got buried in my back catalogue. So what I'm going to do for you, apart from uploading this video, I'm also going to put a separate post on the Patreon page and on the YouTube member page, sharing that old video with you, so you will be able to learn about 10 more obscure Dreamcast games. But today we're going to go through the 10 I've probably played the most. So I do not even necessarily have the strongest of opinions on all of these games. Well, strong opinions on all of these games, the most positive opinions on all of these games. We'll say that instead. So yeah, these are the top 10 Dreamcast games I've probably played the most. Yes, so let's have a look. First of all, we have Sonic Bloody Adventure. I believe this was the first ever Dreamcast game I played, and graphically my mind was absolutely blown. And speaking of that, that's how I felt with regards to a lot of stuff I had seen on the Dreamcast for the first time. The system blew me away in terms of graphical presentation, and did a better job of doing so than that of the PS2, GameCube or original Xbox. For me, the Dreamcast was the last platform that really impressed me when it comes to the quality of the aesthetics that was on display, and Sonic Adventure was one of those games. But personally, what I was hoping for was a Mario 64 like high quality 3D platforming experience, and I don't really feel I got that with Sonic Adventure. It was all good if you played as Sonic the Hedgehog, but if you played as any of the other characters like Big the Cat, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, it was just not very good platforming in comparison to what you could already find on the Nintendo 64 or even the Sony PlayStation for that matter. They tried to create something different, but at the end of the day, a lot of the differences ended up being to the game's detriment. Like, who really wanted that much voice acting in a Sonic game? Who really wanted that much story in a Sonic game? Sonic is not about story. Sonic is not about character development. Sonic is about gotta go fast. Got to go fast through great platforming levels, and I don't really feel Sonic Adventure brought much of that to the table, apart from the Sonic stages. I thought a lot of the Sonic stages were fun because you did get that, you got to go fast, but the rest of it, it wasn't a Sonic experience. It felt like a really poor quality Japanese anime, much of it, especially the story. Like Sonic Adventure, yeah, biggest misstep in Sonic history in my opinion. Yeah, you got some really bad games like Sonic Boom, Sonic 06, but they didn't change direction and go in such a bad direction so drastically ever again. Sonic Adventure, yeah, I've got a lot of problems with that game. Next one I'm more positive about, but I still have issues. But I've played it a lot because, again, I got these games both the same Christmas, I believe. WWF Royal Rumble. This was at the height of the Attitude Era, when the wrestling was more popular than it has ever been. So I was absolutely wrestling mad at the time of getting this game. And I think between me and my brother, that year on our Christmas piles, we got WWF Royal Rumble, WWF No Mercy, and WWF SmackDown 2, all on the same Christmas day. And now, because this is raw, my computer has just put up a screensaver so I can no longer see what I'm doing. So I'm going to quickly adjust that before I carry on talking about Royal Rumble. And I am back. So yes, what's special about this game? What's not so great about this game? Firstly, absolutely pucker graphics. They look much better than in SmackDown 2 in my opinion, and way, way, way better than what can be found in No Mercy. Another really amazing, fantastic feature of this was you was restricted in those other two games to only being allowed 4 wrestlers in the ring at the same time, which I'm going to assume was down to the PS1 and the Nintendo 64's system limitations. From what I can remember with Royal Rumble, on the other hand, you could actually have a much more faithful Royal Rumble experience, because you could have up to, it was either 7 or 8 wrestlers in the ring at the same time simultaneously, which looked amazing at the time, especially bearing in mind the graphics were better in this game as well. If you don't know that much about this game, it actually was an arcade game for the Sega Naomi, I believe, the last ever WWF arcade game, period. The only drawbacks with regards to that, though, and probably the biggest flaw of the game, is the play modes are very limited, and you can quickly play through everything the game has to offer in a matter of hours, whereas SmackDown 2 and WWF No Mercy had far more unlockables and far more reasons to keep going back to those games than this. This game, you're literally getting a few good hours of high quality fun. It literally is an arcade game, so what can you expect, really? However, at the time, I obviously didn't know that. They was just all 3 different wrestling console games to me. But its upside was its graphics and the amount of wrestlers you could have in the ring simultaneously. And something that pleased me immensely about all 3 of these wrestling games was that you could play as Kurt Angle in all of them for the first time, who was my favourite wrestler at the time. I just thought Kurt Angle was freaking cool. I respected the man. He used to preach to people about how important it was to drink milk. He celebrated even the smallest achievements, like he had won the Olympics. Everything about the man smacked of coolness to me. So yeah, that's the first 2 I've played a lot of. And here's another one, which will probably come as a surprise to you, more surprising than the previous 2, is UEFA Dream Soccer, a football game for the Dreamcast. And you might be wondering, this is quite an obscure game to have played a lot of. Well, the reason for that would be Nintendo 64 and PlayStation had ISS and FIFA games, whereas the Dreamcast didn't. So we had more obscure football games instead. And this one was by Silicon Dreams. But once again, the graphics were a million times better than what was available on other platforms. Can't say I remember a great deal about this game other than it was a football game. And I liked it. I was a massive, massive football fan at the time, far more than I am now. And the big shift in my attitude towards football, I would say, has partially come down to moving house. I was born in London in '86, and I lived just round the corner from the Den. So I used to go to every Millwall home game as a child. So I bloody loved football. It was just great fun to go watch. And when I moved away, obviously it became a lot of rigmarole to be able to get down to London, and apart from getting to London, you then had to pay the price of a ticket. And these days, football clubs just take the absolute piss, and they charge an absolute fortune for tickets. So no, as much as I like football, I am not paying the prices that football clubs expect supporters to pay these days, because quite frankly I think it's disgraceful. It's a rip-off. The same goes for what footballers actually get paid these days. If it's that popular, fair enough, but if it's that popular, I'm not interested in it anymore, because like I said, I'm not willing to pay that sort of money to get something which I do not think is a good enough return in terms of enjoyment and quality. So yes, football, amazing in the 90s, not so much now. It's gone downhill. It's a rip-off. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this when I was younger. Sorry for the tangent, but I suppose this is what this is about. Rawness and going off on tangents. Next one, Choo Choo Rocket. I played this one a fair bit. I'm pretty sure most of you at home are familiar with this game anyway. It's a very basic puzzle game, but what intrigues me more about this game rather than the gameplay itself is some of the elements that surround the game. From what I recall, not more from than what I recall. What I remember doing is going online on the Sega Dreamcast a lot, and because going online was a fairly new thing for younger people at the time, the Dreamcast was the first platform I owned personally where I could browse online. And I remember only doing a few things on it because I couldn't really see the full extent of what the internet was for at the time. But I remember going into Dreamcast chat rooms and essentially just like insulting and trolling people and stuff, because to me that was amusing in my infantile teenage brain. But apart from that, Choo Choo Rocket feeds into that narrative as well. From what I recall, now I remember why I can recall why I said recall earlier, because I remember the tangent I was going to talk about. You could actually log online onto the Dreamcast service, whatever it was called at the time. Can't remember anymore. Using that Dream Key or Dream On, whatever you wanted to call it. Put it in the disc in the machine. And you could order this game for free. So to me, that was just mental. You could just go on your television, type in your address, and then you get sent a game. I personally didn't believe it until it actually showed up on my doorstep. And then once you got it, you could also play this game with other people online too, and all of this was proper cutting edge stuff at the time. And again, no one really used the PS2 much or the GameCube online, but we was doing it on the Dreamcast way before that. So the Dreamcast was ahead of the curve in so many different ways, and Choo Choo Rocket is an example of how ahead the system was in so many different categories. Next, we got a game I've played a lot, but I'd say I've played this one in more recent times than I have back at the time. I've never played this one back in the day, but I've grown to appreciate it over the years. And this one is Power Stone, a game what is perhaps a lot of people's favourites. It's an early arena fighting game, so you can play up to 4 players in this, I believe. 2 or 4, can't remember. I think it's 4. Is it? Someone will have to correct me, but you can either play 2-player or 4-player and run around in an arena fighting one another like you do in a fighting game. But like Super Smash Brothers, there's also items scattered throughout this isometric viewpoint where you can pick these items up and throw it at the enemies to take them out. Something I recall really getting on my nerves with this one is, once again, because it was an arcade game, it's short but at points extremely challenging. So I did a live stream a few years ago with friends, and I found myself getting very angry very quickly trying to defeat the last boss, because everything about it just seems really unfair, and it just feels like the boss has a lot of advantages over the actual player themselves, and the player, i.e. myself. But apart from the very, very steep unfair difficulty curves at time, it's really great fun. So if you've not played Power Stone, make sure you do. Another one. I've got quite a lot of sports games on this pile. Top Hat Sportsman. We got Virtual Tennis 2. Again, if you've never played them before, Virtual Tennis, they were top tier tennis games at the time. And you could play as my favourite tennis player at the time, Tim Henman. Who remembers that loser? I don't think he ever won anything. But yeah, Tim Henman is in this one. And you got the Williams sisters on the front cover too. Oh, Henman's down there. But yeah, it's just a really, really strong tennis game. Speaking of tennis games, if you've not played it yet, another game what came out in this time frame, absolutely amazing tennis game, Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Color. It's a full-blown tennis RPG where you level up and you go around an overhead world playing various people to become the tennis world champion of the Mushroom Kingdom. But yeah, both great games. Tennis, what else can I say? Next one's a little bit more in line with what I'm doing on the channel at the moment, and I've not made a video on this one actually, so maybe I need to do that one soon. Soul Calibur, the follow-up to Soul Blade, which was on the Sony PlayStation. Namco's first fighting game on the Sega Dreamcast, featuring weapons-based combat. And what you would notice if you played this game back in the day, like many of these games on the Sega Dreamcast, was just how graphically fantastic it looked for a home console experience. Like literally another level to the Tekken games you could get on the Sony PlayStation to what we were seeing. It just looked so good. But the Dreamcast was the first system where polygon graphics didn't look ugly and for the first time we were seeing nice, smooth edges. And in terms of good looking 3D fighting games, Soul Calibur was the first ever, in my opinion. Okay, I've only got 3 more to go through now. And once again, this is a game I've played a lot more in recent times. Skies of Arcadia for the Sega Dreamcast. Well, obviously it's for the Dreamcast. So I've got a little bit thrown because I've just noticed I've frozen on my screen. So I'm not sure whether it's still capturing the footage. So I'm going to cut for a moment and then come back. Okay, it turns out that OBS froze on the screen, but it carried on recording fine anyway, so we're rolling once more. And we're up to Skies of Arcadia, a great JRPG which I've played in more recent years. It literally is what I just described it as, just a really good, big RPG, and one of the most impressive looking in the time frame it was released. Like, if you looked at the Final Fantasy games on the Sony PlayStation, back then they still had the pre-rendered backgrounds with polygons walking around on those flat backgrounds, kind of like Resident Evil games. Where Skies of Arcadia, on the other hand, had full 3D environments like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64. However, obviously being a Dreamcast game, the graphics are even a step up from that. So it was one of the most impressive JRPGs in the world at the time of its release. Like many great games from the genre, it has a decent story, a good soundtrack to accompany it, and a good battle system. But from what I recall as well, it has an additional style of battles you have to have as well, which involve airship to airship combat, which control quite differently to what the combat mechanics we got in traditional RPGs from the time. So I would recommend highly to try out Skies of Arcadia if it's one you've not got to yet. Now, the top 2 Dreamcast games I've put the most time into. I'm going to actually show both of them at once, and it's probably pretty obvious the 2 games I'm going to show if you know anything about my love for these games. And they are, of course, Shenmue and Shenmue 2. One big interconnected story where you could even transfer your items from one game to the other. When it comes to Shenmue, the game, all I can say is it blew my mind. It's one of those moments in my gaming life where I was just in shock and awe at what I was looking at. In regards to these style moments, the first time this ever happened to me was when I played Donkey Kong Country for the first time on the Super Nintendo. That looked like nothing I'd ever seen. The next time was Mario 64, or the Nintendo 64. That looked ridiculous. And then Shenmue on the Dreamcast took all of that to an entire different level. I remember my grandfather coming into the room and having a look at me playing it. And to him, it just did. This is a man who wasn't into gaming, and what he was familiar with was probably the likes of Pac-Man and Space Invaders. And what he was looking at, he couldn't even see it as being a game because it looked so lifelike. It didn't look like a game. It just looked like a TV show or a video of real life. Unless you played Shenmue when it first came out, you would not be able to fully comprehend how ahead of the curve it was, because there's elements in all modern games, I guess, what we had back in Shenmue, which was at the time the highest budget video game that had ever been produced, and just took everything to the next level. Like, I didn't even feel we got anything on the PS2, original Xbox or GameCube that looked graphically as impressive or was as immersive as what we got in that game. Both Shenmue and Shenmue 2 brought gaming to the next level. So everything about it was amazing, and the experiences I had with those games growing up will just always stick with me as wow moments. And there has not been an experience I have been through in gaming, even to this day, that matches the magic I had with those. They were just that ahead of the curve, in my opinion. So I guess that's it. I've talked through 10 games with you. I would be eager to hear your feedback below on what you thought of today's video, and if you like this format as much as the other top 10 videos I was doing, which I was using my traditional formula where I would write a narrative script obviously voice it over and then overlay gameplay clips. However, I feel most of these games here are all or you should all probably know them already, I would expect. So I don't feel it's necessary to put footage over the top today. However, if you feel you may have needed that, maybe there was something you've not seen before, let me know. Like I said, I'm very open to feedback. I'm experimenting here and trying something different, something a little bit more raw, and something a little bit more personal. So yeah, I'd love to hear all your thoughts. Thanks for all your support, and I'll speak to you all soon. Yeah, cheerio. Now I've got to turn this off.